Hey Jess, come over here for a second.
What is it, Dad?
Do you know what I really like?
What?
Video games.
Oh, video games are so cool!
But do you know what I like even more?
What?
Video game music.
And then they lived happily ever after. Oh shoot! Hey there, the name's Zurachi. Today I'm gonna be talking about my favorite video game music. But because I love music so much, we're gonna make this extra special. It's not gonna be a top 5 or a top 10. It's gonna be a top 20. I'd be holding up 20 fingers, but as you can see, I only have 10. Now before we start, I just want to explain some of the factors that went into creating this list.
The main focus of this top 20 is the music alone. Things like story, gameplay, or visual presentation were not taken into consideration for any of my picks. And just to make sure that this list is as musically diverse as possible, I made sure that each composer is entitled to just one pick. I also want to emphasize that these are just my personal favorite soundtracks. This is not meant to be an objective list of any sorts, and it shouldn't be, because music is entirely subjective in the first place. If you hear something that you like, cool. If you hear something that you don't like, that's cool too. And finally, let's just talk about it. If you notice that any of your favorites are missing from this list, feel free to sound off your thoughts about the soundtracks that do interest you in the comments section.
Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's just get on with the video game music. Oh yeah.
Considering that there's a lot of Mega Man games to choose from, and that's no lie, it was really hard for me to pick which soundtrack to showcase. But ultimately, I settled on Mega Man 8 not only because of how different it sounds compared to the rest of the series, but simply because it just grooves. Musically, it might be a departure from the rest of the series, but at the end of the day, it's all still crafted in a way that makes me want to bob my head, and sometimes I think that's all you really need. Glorious, epic, theatrical, majestic. With these words, you'd think I'd be talking about power metal. Well, that may be true, but it's also how I describe the soundtrack of ActRaiser. Considering that it came out early 1990 in the Super Nintendo's early days, it's really surprising to me how sonically good it sounds. The orchestration is clear, but it has that special synthesized punch the SNES hardware gives the instrumentation. And as you'll soon hear, ActRaiser's music does an amazing job of creating different emotional atmospheres. The soundtrack for The World Ends With You stands out to me because of how unique it sounds compared to most games that I've played thus far. By borrowing elements of J-pop, dance, and rock music, The World Ends With You has its own clear and distinctive sound, while managing to maintain a thematic connection song after song. I think it's so sonically characteristic that even if I hear just a few seconds of it, I'll know where it's coming from. I also like that even if it's just a little bit of it, it gives you a nice peek into the musical culture of Japan.
「こんな夜は騒ぎ出す夜更け」
From start to finish, the Ninja Warrior soundtrack is a constant assault of adrenaline. Every time I hear the music of this game, it's guaranteed to get me feeling stoked. It has possibly one of the best rhythm sections that I've ever heard in a game. And in saying that, I'm referring to the combination of energetic drums and busy bass lines heard in all the songs. When you combine driving rhythms and soaring melodies, you definitely have a soundtrack that perfectly fits a game like Ninja Warriors. When the worlds of JRPGs and classical music are put together, you get Eternal Sonata. Eternal Sonata is based entirely around Frédéric Chopin, a pianist and composer from the 1800s. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that I'm some sort of classical music know-it-all and drop all these knowledge bombs about that stuff, but what I can say is that a soundtrack like Eternal Sonatas is a perfect combination of new and classical compositions. After all, I like to think that music is a universal language that can communicate well with both other songs and listeners. Dust and Elysian Tale is one of the few games out there that caught my attention entirely because of its soundtrack. I don't remember all the details, but I do know that as soon as I heard a piece of the game's music, I was just like, oh yeah, that song! So after finding out that the music I heard was from Dust and Elysian Tale, I grabbed the game instantly and haven't looked back. Definitely a case of a pleasant surprise. I don't know what it is, but there's something about Dust's soundtrack that really brings out the true flavor of the game. A lot of it is ambient and orchestral, but driving at the same time. I'm not gonna lie, I'm definitely not a fan of the Final Fantasy XIII series, but I can say for sure that I love the music. Final Fantasy XIII-2's soundtrack in particular caught my attention because genre-wise there's a lot more variation than the first game of the series. It can get orchestral, it can get rockin', and it can even get you dancing. Heck, the soundtrack even gets progressive as a number of songs have two different versions to cover different moods. While it all may be far from sounding like a traditional Final Fantasy soundtrack, that doesn't prevent Final Fantasy XIII-2 from sounding really good to me. Out of the entire Zelda franchise, I feel that Ocarina of Time's soundtrack stands out the most to me, and I think it all comes down to the game having so many memorable musical moments, which range from simply to acquiring an item to the first time you step out onto Hyrule Field. There's something about the entire soundtrack that makes me feel that there's more to this world that I haven't seen. It invokes a need in me, and that is a need to go on a journey. But if that sounds a little ridiculous to you, then I can just end it off by saying that I simply just like it. If you take a step back and look at most JRPGs from the 90s, you'll notice that they musically fit together really nicely. You can picture any of their songs being performed by an orchestra. Breath of Fire 3, on the other hand, stands out from the crowd by blending elements of jazz, blues, funk, and progressive rock. So you can say that I can easily imagine the soundtrack being performed by a jazz band. Combined with the fantasy world provided by the game, you have one heck of a groovy experience with dragons. And we all know that dragons make everything better. Castlevania III soundtrack is one of my most favorites on the NES, but here I'll be showing specifically the Japanese version of the game, Akumajo Densetsu. It has a special chipset that expands the NES's audio capabilities, and oh boy does it make a difference. Now, I'm not necessarily saying the original version is better by any means, it's really just different, but it's definitely the one that I personally prefer to hear. To me, it just sounds a lot more energetic and full, and is most likely more representative of what the creators of the game envisioned musically.